Sarah here. Welcome back to another episode of You're Fucking Welcome. Today's episode was inspired by a couple things that happened over the weekend. One thing in my personal life, one thing based on a conversation that I was having with a client about relationships, and then another with a client where I was talking with them about just hiring coaches and hiring contractors. And it all comes back to how important it is to let people be who they actually are, and the remembering to walk away from the person who isn't right for you in any capacity versus, again, attempting to try and force somebody to be something different. And so let me start off with this when it comes to personal, because again, something that just like kind of occurred to me over the weekend. It's funny. I know I've shared with you guys, like I've been dating more, and there are people that I'm seeing certainly and like talking to more than others. And it's really, again, just funny for me. I'm like, somebody's going to eventually listen to these, or, I'm going to have to kind of like get ahead with myself and give kind of like tips and guidance on how to date me, and then kind of like slip these episodes to men, if you will. But my point is that I was having a conversation with a guy that I have been seeing, and I caught myself yesterday feeling a little bit frustrated when it comes to like the communication around a couple different things. And as I've shared with you guys before, I feel like I'm in this place where more than ever before in my life, I am craving like very masculine energy from a man, right? Somebody who, I don't want to say predicts what I want, but I'm so used to being in the driver's seat. I'm so used to being in control. I'm so used to creating what it is that I want. The idea or the feeling of somebody, going out of their way to do something for me, or again, making me feel a certain way without me feeling as though I have to like create it, is something that I'm craving so much right now. And it's interesting to me to watch myself struggle a bit to be in the feminine in that way, but then catching myself with, okay, but if I am in the masculine energy in so many ways, it's not shocking that I'm then attracting somebody who is not as like in their masculine in terms of like being in control of the dynamic, if that makes sense, right? Like it's just not shocking. And so again, I'm working on that within myself and paying attention to what feels right for me, and how I want to adjust and how I've kind of screwed it up in the past, if you will. But my ultimate point being, in a particular conversation, I kept feeling frustrated that this person wasn't giving me what I wanted. It wasn't saying what I wanted to hear. And I'm not necessarily saying this about this particular person, but it was an interesting thing for me to pay attention to yesterday, in the sense that, but Sarah, is this a situation where you are expecting him to be somebody he actually isn't? And then again, it kind of like put me on this rabbit hole, down this rabbit hole of like thinking about all the times that I've done that in the past, specifically with my ex, with my long-term relationship, feeling as though, God, why doesn't he do this? Or why doesn't he understand that? Why doesn't he communicate this way? And I'm not saying this like in a blaming myself way, but I'm saying it that like, I'm like, why didn't you see that that's simply who he wasn't? It wasn't who he was ever going to be. And you spent so much time frustrated over that, trying to make him understand where you were coming from. And instead of just simply holding the space that actually somebody who can communicate that way exists. And if that's what you ultimately really, really want and desire, it's your job to walk away and pursue and find that thing, versus, again, spending time and energy frustrated trying to change somebody when it comes to who they actually are, right? And I know that we all do this with relationships. Like, not we all, my hope is that many of you don't, but I think it is the norm to feel like, you want somebody to be more romantic and like they're not romantic, for example, and then you spend so much time and energy frustrated that they're not giving you that. Whereas in so many cases, the writing was on the wall from the very beginning, and maybe that simply isn't the right partner, right? And we should pursue the right one instead of, again, attempting to force somebody to be something that they are actually not. And I think when you just think about how much time we've all spent frustrated and pissed off and resentful over people not giving us what we wanted, it's a wake-up call, if you will, to recognize that sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes it's really just a clear like situation where it's time to walk away versus, again, spending more time being frustrated trying to warp that person into what they are not. And so again, I was talking about this with a client over the weekend as well when we were talking about this whole feminine and masculine energy concept. And I certainly don't want to pretend that I am an expert on this. I know that there are so many people who I'm affiliated with or like just like connected with that are actual experts on this. And so, I never want to insult anybody by acting like I've got like this all figured out, because truly I don't. And it's something that fascinates me, and it's something that I've, I don't know, I feel like I've learned a lot about, I've come a far way with, but I certainly don't feel like an expert. But my point is, we were talking, one of my clients is single, and she's been single for a while, and she's very much like me. Like I really relate to her a lot. And that's why we talk about dating and relationships so much, because she's somebody who has this massively successful business. She is craving that really masculine presence in her life, but she kind of has the belief that but in order for him to be masculine, I have to teach him how to be masculine. It's like, I literally the thought of a man, not that I've never gotten flowers from a man, like I've certainly have in relationships especially, but I mean the idea of somebody just going above and beyond when I wasn't expecting it. I don't even open up my mind to the fact that somebody could do that. I feel like in order to do that, they have to be led in that direction. Again, me just so much being in the masculine, controlled energy. And so again, my client is just like this exactly. She was writing, we were sitting there writing her dating profile and working on it. And she caught herself kind of leading and telling, this man exactly how to operate and what she wants. And in this really masculine way. And I was just saying, I was not, I know that I do not have this all figured out, but it's just so interesting how we're sitting here saying we want this masculine man, while at the same time, we're in our masculine, and the polarity doesn't work. There's no polarity there. Right. There has to be that opposite energy to attract the thing that we want, right? A masculine man wants a woman more so in her feminine, more surrendered energy as a general rule. And so again, not trying to go into all of that, and it's more complex than we could possibly talk about today. But again, it was another example of me as we were talking this out, just in the sense of we spend so much time either wanting somebody to be different, or we're saying we want a different outcome, but we're doing the opposite of what is going to create that outcome, right? We're actually attracting the opposite of what we want in those situations. Again, we want somebody to take charge, but we're not letting them take charge. We're telling them how to change things. And again, it creates this really wonky energy that often is a huge mismatch. But to take this further into business, I want to remind you here, and I want you to embrace that. Let's say if you were hiring a coach, let's say if you were hiring somebody to work on your team, every single person has different styles, has different strengths. And what I'll find so often, and the reason this came up over the mastermind, is somebody was saying how somebody had hired one coach and walked away from that coaching experience. This isn't my client, but she was talking about somebody else. Walked away from that coaching experience really disappointed because she didn't learn more about structure. And I'm paraphrasing here, but she didn't learn more about structure and systems and the more masculine, practical aspects of business. And I was I don't know the situation. And so I'm certainly not trying to say anything negative about somebody I don't know or a situation. I don't know what I'm talking about here, but I was it's always so interesting to me though, where I knew the coach in particular that we were talking about. I'm I don't understand how anybody would think hiring that person, they would walk away with structure or systems, because that person doesn't talk about structure or systems. Same thing with when we're hiring, again, a contractor. We'll hire people who are clearly like not tech savvy, for example, and then we're upset that they're not moving more quickly with like the VA tech tasks that we've given them, right? Or again, there's somebody who is really creative and then they don't warp into this support role because that's not who they are. My coach Carrie is a big advocate for the wealth dynamics test. If you just Google it, you'll find it, but it has different profiles in terms of like you're, the creator, you're the star, you're the mechanic, and it kind of gives you some concept of what your specialty is. And it's a good one to give your team as well, because if we're looking at a team, right, you hire 5 different people. And naturally, if you've got 5 people who are, the stars or 5 people who are the creatives, that's great. You've got great ideas, but you don't have anybody to put the systems and structures in place. You don't have anybody to actually implement. You don't want 5 people who are, again, in idea or spotlight mode with nobody obviously like putting the pieces together on the back end. And so again, I'm using that as an example of so often we're not being present. We're not paying attention to what we actually need in a certain dynamic. We're hiring anybody, or we're hiring somebody and we're hoping that they're going to be who we want them to be, instead of really making sure that you are paying attention to the fact that you want a specialized person for this particular job. And, another thing that we were talking about is how often people think that like not being direct is kind, right? Every single day of my life, I'll have a conversation with clients and they say something, well, I didn't want to say anything because I wanted to be nice. Or, I didn't want to be rude. Women, that's our biggest thing. Like we don't want to be perceived as rude or bitchy or whatever. And for example, not being specific and clear about how you want something done, and then being pissed off that it wasn't done the way that you wanted it to be done, that's unkind, right? I believe that's the unkind thing. You're not even giving somebody an opportunity to rise to the occasion. You're not giving somebody an opportunity to be what you wanted them to be. You're just, again, keeping it bottled up and not expressing it. And then, of course, it becomes an issue. And so I'm using that example because I hear it so often from people where they'll hire a contractor, a VA, whatever it is, and, they want somebody who is super creative or super, great at, again, graphics, whatever it is. And like they want these beautiful graphics made, but then they hire the person who has never touched Canva before, and then they wonder why they're disappointed with the end results. So often, again, we're not paying attention to who somebody actually is. And we're hiring or dating somebody because of like the potential of what we want, and then believing that we can kind of like white knuckle that person into being what we want. And I hope in saying all of this, I'm making it more clear for you that that's a lot of wasted time and energy. That's a lot of frustration that doesn't need to be there. And the more each and every one of us get more ruthless about what we want in the first place, and we declare it and we communicate it, and then we walk away when it doesn't rise to that level, the better off we'll all be. And just like I was saying about the thing about it being kinder to express that, I think a really good reframe for anybody struggling with this so often is really truly to remember that every time you're doing something that feels difficult in that way, you're giving the next person permission to do it as well. If I walk away from a dating situation that doesn't serve me because it's okay, but it's not as great as I want it to be, yes, that's for me, of course, right? It's my personal life. While at the same time, there's something that feels really purposeful and important to me about being able to walk my walk in that way, and then giving you permission to do it as well, right? Like just as an example, I'm very adamant about the fact that I don't want to date a man with kids. I've been down that road before, and I loved my ex's children, but that was the hardest part of our breakup. And I certainly don't think I could go through that again, having to break up essentially with children. And like, I can't see myself doing that again. And it's not something that I want. And then there are other reasons for it as well. And so there have been a few times where I've caught myself even on these apps where I'm like swiping yes on like with somebody who has kids. I'm like, oh, well, this could be okay. Well, he has a good job and he's really cute. And I'm like, no. You know you don't want this. And so every single time you say yes to something that you know you don't ultimately want, like you are so clearly betraying yourself. And again, when it comes to what I do, which is obviously such a big part of my life, it's all often such a helpful reminder for me with like, no, but like I have to do this for what I do, for all of you that are listening, because I have to, again, walk that walk, no matter how hard of a situation it might be sometimes, not in the example that I just gave you, but in all like aspects of life. I need to walk that walk and talk that talk because of the fact that, again, I'm hopefully giving you permission to as well. And so again, even, in your communication with your like website designer, right? Like let's say that you hired, if you are not happy with the job being done, right? You get to, again, express that kindly, but not only do you benefit yourself because you are standing up for what you want, but you're ultimately also giving that business owner the permission to, stretch their boundaries and to even further declare what it is that they want. Like I really do. I think when things are communicated kindly and appropriately, I think it has such a positive ripple effect. I really do. And so in that way, again, it's not unkind. I actually think it's the kind thing to do. And so, all of this to say, I just want you all to remember that, again, when it comes to dating, when it comes to hiring somebody, when it comes to all your relationships, right? The relationships with your parents, whatever, people are who they are. I think that, yes, people change sometimes. Like, how people say, like, people don't change. I don't agree with that because I know how much I've changed, but I've changed because I've wanted to. People who don't want to change won't change. People who are invested in growth and invested in learning and are interested in learning, I think there's a little bit more space for that, for that change. While at the same time, I think we've all been around humans in our lives that are not willing to grow and change. They're not ready or willing to see things differently. And it's certainly not your job to force them to, right? It's not your job to force somebody to be more aware or more, enlightened, whatever it is. That's not necessarily your job, especially if you don't want it to be your job. I don't want it to be my job. I don't want to be in a relationship with somebody I feel as though I have to shove down their throats, hear all these concepts and hear all these things. I don't want to coach, the guy I'm sleeping with, of course. And so again, I'm saying all of that to remind you that not every person on this planet is going to be who and what you want them to be. There are going to be situations where you are disappointed and frustrated sometimes, but what I want for you is for you to get better and better and better at seeing that earlier, seeing that more clearly, and rather than being afraid to walk away from something that's okay, you are really clear on the way in which you want things to be your way, like the ultimate vision and truth of what it is that you want. And I want you to hold space for the fact that that exists, right? Hold the belief that that is out there for you. That's, again, whether that is the romantic partner or whether that is the unicorn of a copywriter that you're trying to find. That person exists. And so it's your job to, again, walk away from anything that is less than versus spending the time and energy trying to force them to be that, and go out and pursue what it is that you want as boldly as possible. Declare it, say it, put it out there in your dating profile, put it out there in the ad when you're looking for that person to hire them. Own exactly who you want them to be, rather than, again, putting yourself in a position where you are spending way too much time, way too much energy being frustrated and resentful around a situation that is, again, never going to change or most likely not going to change. And again, the writing was on the wall from the very beginning because, again, it's just such a common thing. And I know that I say it a lot. We talk about this whole concept of, owning what you want and not settling for less. And I feel like I say this every single time. I know that I sound repetitive about that, while at the same time, it's everything. It goes so fucking deep. It goes into every aspect of our lives. And I think that I can sit here and preach it to you each and every week, and I'm living, 2% of what's possible for me, right? We all have just more space and more room to grow with it, with everything. And so again, I feel like it's such a big part of my job to keep reminding you of that, because it's, again, I want you to have what you want. It's massively important to me because I know it's possible for you and I want you to keep striving for it. And that, again, starts with you not settling for less and not trying to fool yourself or fool others into becoming what they're not, because you don't deserve that frustration and resentment. Okay? I'll talk to you in the next episode. Bye.